There's no question that Howard Jones is one of my best friends in the whole wide world. If we could tell all the stories that we need to tell, we would be here all night long talking about the last 40 years. But I want to thank him in front of his family, in front of the world, for his friendship and for what he has meant to this community. I was telling my friend Sylvia, and she is not my fiance. I saw Frank and Barbara kind of raising their eyebrows a minute ago. But anyway, I was telling Sylvia on the way over here the Howard Jones story and what he has meant to this community. And it is nothing less than remarkable. And so thank you, Howard Jones, for all that you do for all of us. For those of you who don't know, I am the congressman not only for Wilson County, but for 23 other counties. I represent 24 counties in the U.S. House of Representatives, some 740,000 people. I've done it for the last 11 years, and I guess I'll do it for another 11 years. But anyway, it's a joy to go to Washington each week to represent the people of this district. I was thinking about what I could say to you that would be a little unique, something that might be relevant to your family reunion. And I've come up with one thing that I want to talk about, and I can do this very quickly. I want to talk about education. Education 80 years ago in rural Wilson County. You must understand that 80 years ago, we had one public school in the city of Wilson that was an elementary school. Didn't have a high school, just one public elementary school in the city of Wilson. But outside of the city of Wilson, there were no public schools whatsoever. No black elementary schools, no black middle schools, no black high schools. There was no education outside of the city limits of Wilson. The only thing we had was a little one-room school in some communities that was connected to the church. And so all of these churches were built during Reconstruction, and the churches understood education, and so they would build a little one-room school right next to the church. And for 2 or 3 months out of the year, the children would come in and they would find some way to teach them how to read and to write and to count. But that didn't go over so well. It educated a few children, but it was not significant. And in 1910, I want you to remember this, in 1910, Booker T. Washington. Hey, Howard Jr. Hey, brother. God bless you, man. All right. 1910, Booker T. Washington came to Wilson on what was called an educational tour. When he came to the city of Wilson, he met with the black leaders of Wilson, and he said, I'm on an education tour. Tell me about your education system. They said, well, do you really want to know? Do you just come here just to be able to say that you've been to the South and talk about education? Do you really want to know how it dilemma here in Wilson County? And Booker T. Washington said yes. They said, well, if you really want to know, here's the deal. We've got one black elementary school in the city of Wilson called the Wilson Colored Graded School. That's all we have. If you don't live in the city of Wilson, you don't have access to a public education. And if you want to call yourself the great educator of the South, you need to go back and figure out a way to help us find educational opportunities in Wilson County for our children. Booker T. Washington said, well, that's a pretty tall order. I mean, how do you expect me to do this? They said, well, you're on an education tour. Figure out how to make it happen. We need to educate our children. Booker T. Washington, to make a long story short, Booker T. Washington went back to Tuskegee, where he was the founder, and met with Julius Rosenwald, who was the chairman of his board in Tuskegee. Julius Rosenwald was one of the richest men in America at that time. He was the Bill Gates. He was the Warren Buffetts of his day. He was a rich, or Donald Trump. Let me put him in there. He was the Donald Trump of his day. He was a rich man. And Booker T. Washington told Julius Rosenwald, and he was also, Rosenwald was the president of Sears. It used to be called Sears Roebuck, but now it's called Sears. He told Rosenwald, look, you're sitting on all these millions of dollars, and I've got poor black children down in Wilson County, and Nash, and Edgecombe, and Halifax County, all of these counties in North Carolina, and South Carolina, and Alabama, and Mississippi, and Georgia, you know, who need educational opportunities. If you really want to do something valuable, please use your wealth to build some schools in rural African-American communities. Rosenwald accepted the challenge. And Rosenwald used his wealth and built 5 schools in the southern part of the United States of America. And you must know that 16 of those schools were right here in Wilson County. And guess what? Some of you in this room went to Rosenwald School. You may not even have known it was a Rosenwald School when you went there, but some of you went to Rosenwald Schools. And I can tell you without a doubt that your ancestors went to Rosenwald Schools in this county. And those Rosenwald schools were great schools. They were first generation of public education, but they served a great purpose for a while. But after the Rosenwald schools began to become bloated and unmanageable, there was still no high school for African Americans in Wilson County. They had finally gotten the Rosenwald School, which was an elementary school, and there was one out in Sims. What was the name of it? The one out in Sims? It was called Sims. Okay. They had elementary schools out in rural Wilson County, but still didn't have any high schools in Wilson County. This is after 1949. 1949, there were no high schools for African Americans in Wilson County. A lawsuit was filed and won in Wilson County, and the federal court ordered that 2 schools be built in Wilson County. One in the eastern end of the county, the other in the western end of the county. Therefore, one was named Spade School, the other one was named Springfield. And all of you know the Springfield story, and you can tell it much better than I can. So just want you to connect the dots. I want you to connect the dots from no education to the one-room school, to the Rosenwald School, to the establishment of a public high school in 1949 in Wilson County. And because of these educational opportunities, you have been able to succeed, your children, your grandchildren have been able to succeed, and now you come together as a family to celebrate your legacy. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus that I'm honored to chair. I am in office now for 2 years, just completed the first 6 months, and it is really a labor of love. It's a lot of work. Get ready to board a plane in a few days to Kenya with the president. He's invited me to go over with him. That's his homeland. That's his motherland. He has never been to Kenya. And so I'll be traveling with him on the 23rd of this month over to Kenya, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. We just came back from Charleston the other day, and what a tragedy in Charleston. That's a tragedy that is beyond anyone's imagination that I'm not even going to call him a mentally ill man, a hater, a bigot, walked into a black church during Bible study and sat down with the participants in Bible study for 1 hour. 1 hour, sat there and looked at the people that he's planning to kill. And after the Bible study ended, he reached in his pocket and pulled out a handgun. Started with the pastor, Reverend Clemente Pinckney, started with the pastor and murdered him. He was a state senator. And went right down the line and murdered each one of the individuals in the prayer meeting. And that's a story that has to be remembered. We cannot kick the can down the road and forget all about it. We can't go back to Washington next week and not deal with it. We're going to deal with hate groups in this country. The whole notion of white supremacy, and even the KKK is still alive and well. I got pictures yesterday, this week, of Confederate flags all over Rocky Mount. I assume there's some in Wilson. Confederate flags just going up and down the streets in Rocky Mount. You know, people parading these Confederate flags. And so the work continues. So what I want you to do is to stay strong, stay together as a family, and let's get ready for 2016, because we've got some work to do if we're going to keep moving in the right direction. So thank you for inviting me. God bless all of you. Thank you.